Join me on Monday, August 29th, as we get to sit down and talk with Michael Gardner, obstacles in life and overcoming them and how they impact our walk and different perspective on life. Tune in on Remember God Loves You, and I'll meet you at the Finish Line podcast. Hope you guys have a blessed day, and remember, God loves you, and I'll meet you at the finish line. Bye.
Sign up to The Economist for in-depth curated expert analysis of world events and topics ranging from business and culture to science and technology. You'll get the weekly digital edition, online-only articles, curated newsletters on politics, the markets, science, culture and China, and full access to The Economist Podcast Plus. The Economist is independent journalism for independent thinking. Go to economist.com and get your first month free.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Savaged, unfiltered. Your host, Michael Gardner.
All right, guys. Today we are joined by Joe Rippert of Rip Views Media. Now, this media group, guys, is based out of Chicago, Illinois. Now, Joe basically started this media group as a media group that looks as the media as all media is biased, whether it's viewed on the left or the right. Welcome to the show, Joe. How are you doing, buddy?
Good. Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I want to, before we get into the topic today, because I wanted to talk about the latest coming out of the Biden administration with the student loan, at it as a handout or a hand up. I have views and comments on that. I'd like to share it to the listeners as well as getting comments from you. But I want to get behind this Rip Views Media. I noticed that, the message and the demeanor behind it is that all media is biased, whether it's viewed on the left or the right. Now, I kind of understand what you mean by that, but let's dig a little bit deeper into that. What made you start this media group, Joe?
Yeah, it's a great question, and thank you again for having me on. So the reason I started Rip Views is because I found myself as kind of a man without a home. I don't affiliate with either political party, and the news that I am obsessed with being up to speed with what's going on in the news. So I find it difficult as a person without a party, but that is still interested in making sure I'm aware of what's going on, that no matter what news I consumed, there was a biased spin that was being forced down my throat. It felt like I couldn't find true, unbiased news. In the mornings, I would watch Fox News, and at night, I'd watch MSNBC to keep myself kind of in the center of understanding the bias. So I was watching both polar sides, and I was reading articles from Mother Jones to get a flavor of what the left was thinking, and then I'd read articles from Breitbart to understand what the right was thinking. And I really couldn't find a true representation of the middle. So I said, okay, I'm going to have to focus on either polarized perspective of certain issues. And there's no source that today, in my view, truly brings to the table both sides of each story. So the whole idea with Rip Views is a news aggregator that shows either side of one story in a newsletter form, primarily in the morning. That comes out at 7 a.m. Central Time to all of our subscribers. And it shows the far left and the far right perspective of the top three headlines of the day. And the idea being is all news is biased. Read both sides, and then you decide from there, rather than solely consuming the news of the political affiliation and the side that you agree with.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. As I hear this concept behind your media group, Joe, it almost sounds like a similar concept going back to the 80s and the 70s and 60s, where media actually was unbiased. They reported true and accurate news. They didn't favor one party versus another party. And I think that's very special, with your news, that you give it as it is, right? You're showing, the flaws on the left. You're showing the flaws on the right. You're not agreeing with the left, but you're not agreeing with the right. You're being that unbiased media outlet, which is great. And it's rare too, Joe, because we don't have a lot of groups and media outlets out there, and especially in today's times. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as a nation, we've become more polarized. You see it in every issue. And as a nation, we've become more polarized. As a result, our news has also become more polarized, and the bias is just everywhere. So if you can keep the bias lens as you're reading the news and calling it out, okay, everything I'm going to read from Fox News is going to be very slanted to the right. Everything I read from MSNBC is going to be very slanted to the left. Having and applying that lens to your news consumption is the whole point of Reviews.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I agree with that 100%. Now, I want to get into something here, but before I get into this question here, I'm going to ask you, as an unbiased media group, have you been getting, any types of, slanderous attacks to your network, especially in today's times? I noticed, you put tremendous content out on social media. Has any other groups or outlets, kind of slandered some of your content in any way or fashion?
Yeah, I mean, we're in the arena of politics, so that's going to incite emotions from viewers and the social media followers. And the comments that we do see are generally are towards the opposing bias. So if someone comes on from that's a left or a liberal political affiliation, they will come on and they'll comment bashing the right, and the right social media followers will come on and they'll disagree with the left's point of view in the Rip Views post. Not as much Rip Views itself is where we see the kind of slander, but on the post is where we see a lot. Actually, the topic that we're going to talk about today had a lot of attention on TikTok of all places when I showed news clips from the left and news clips from the right. And there was both directions were coming at it in the comment section, going at each other almost about their disagreement with the opposing views. So it's not as much pointed at Rip Views, but more pointed at the side of the aisle that they disagree with is what we typically see. I also have some people that have started following me on various social medias or following Rip Views on various social medias. They want to get both sides, and they're in politics. They are politicians. So that's been exciting to see. They're quiet. They don't comment, but it's good to see that we have some politicians that are also wanting to view both sides of the aisle and both sides bias when it comes to news headlines.
Yeah, you mentioned that a good point there. You just got into, with people wanting to reach out to you, questioning your network and everything, which is great. It's wonderful because, like I said, folks, this is very rare. Okay. And I could say even living now, I now reside here in Florida. I decided to move my entire livelihood from the state of Georgia to the state of Florida, folks. So, even in Florida, we really don't have an unbiased network. A lot of people will tune to Fox, trying to get accurate information. Fox is even, going, basically to a biased network. It used to never be like that, but such as your network, Joe, it's wonderful that we actually have networks, very, very little now, especially in the 21st century, that will deliver true, accurate news. And that's what news is supposed to be.
Savaged, unfiltered.
I would agree. Sticking to the facts is going to be the easiest way to avoid bias. But our news now is just entertainment. If you go on Fox and watch The Five at night, and you'll see a group of commentators that are saying off the wall things that are skewed to the right, and they're just a form of entertainment. Yes, the topic is oftentimes news, but they're just entertainment. The same thing on the left with Rachel Maddow and her show in the morning. It's just entertainment. She's saying things to keep you entertained. The news almost becomes a secondary objective.
Yeah, well, it's almost like it's almost like a soap opera, from back in the day. In my generation, you turn on this, the TV, and you listen to a soap opera, and or you tune into Saturday Night Live. That's I look at news now as a Saturday Night Live, type of skit, because some of these anchors, they make their little comical, comments and this and that, and it's like they question the American public. Why does the American public, or excuse me, let me rephrase that. How come the American public distrust, the mainstream media? Well, when you have anchors out there, such as Don Lemon and, and such others, just to name a few, Brian Stelter, which is, I'm told, now unemployed from CNN. But, when you have anchors that act that radical, do you blame them? How do you, if you want trust in the American public, deliver unbiased news? That's my opinion on it.
I would agree, and I would also say, though, you gave examples of some folks from the left-leaning bias. Sean Hannity is no different on the right.
Oh, yes, yes. He goes into rhetoric. I do. I mean, Sean Hannity, he will say his side comments. But, I think, as a society, the news is like, a lot of people look at the news as, the true enemy of the people. At first, I'm not going to lie, Joe. I looked at it as that, the mainstream media, the true enemy of this nation. But I don't see it like that anymore. I really see networks right now looking for grand supremacy. They're acting this way for more or less like viewpoints or ratings. Who can one up the other network? And it's sad that we have media outlets that go that route. They shouldn't be worried about ratings. They should be worried about telling the story or the segment to the American people. That's the way it should be.
Yeah, they're all competing for eyeballs, and eyeballs are going to be attracted to the most polarizing topics and the most extreme verbiage used to describe a certain headline. So they know that it's not a secret. It's a science that they've perfected, in the sense that they're going to they're going to overly use extreme words and use it comes to certain headlines like January 6th, like the Mar-a-Lago search, like abortion. They're going to use very polarizing terms and words to describe these issues and have a slant that comes from their point of view of either far left or far right, because that extremism is what our eyeballs tend to go to. And that's no secret that, of the practice that both sides, the right and the left news outlets, are using to get viewership, which is fine. It's just, don't hide behind the fact of, don't hide behind being fair and equal or even and unbiased. All of it is biased. All of it's extremely biased. And if no one should watch the news thinking they're not consuming biased media and narratives coming down their throat.
Well, the news, they haven't been transparent, since the 80s. I remember as a small child watching the news and turning on, the news as young as 4 or 5 years old. And, it wasn't like this. They were very transparent. They gave the news. They didn't go into these ridiculous stories and headlines that they have today. They would give you the local on the 8s. They would give you the weather. They would give you a couple little like local news stories, and that was it. And then it would go to the next show. They wouldn't bash an entire candidate because they don't like them. They wouldn't make, everybody's life a living hell. They would just give you the news. Like, I'm like, that was great. And then you fast forward, 25, 30 years later, and it's like, where the hell is our media gone?
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy where we've gotten to. I thought one eye-opening piece that really caught my attention is when the investigation was going on about the Jan 6 hearing. They were disclosing text message, which both sides of the media are going to have their perspective and their spin on the what the Jan 6 thing is. That's not what I'm here to talk about. But what I did find interesting is that Sean Hannity was texting directly with the Trumps during the Jan 6, giving them advice of what to do or what actions to take. And the fact that our news anchor is that entrenched in that kind of ingrained into our president's cabinet is just astonishing to me. I'm sure it's going on the other side as well with the
I'm
current
sure.
administration and the left, but that's almost state-run media at that point. Where that is state-run media. If our news anchor is truly that entrenched with the administration on either side, that's concerning to me. I don't want my media to be entrenched in an administration. That's only going to accelerate the bias.
Yeah, the media is out of control. I mean, you mentioned Sean Hannity. I mean, when he did that little bit there, with the texting and everything, shortly after that, you see Don Lemon coming out and he was having a field trip on it. He was like, this is out of control and radical right and this. I was like, whoa. But, I want to get into the topic here, guys, because the main topic for the show, guys, is with the student loan, Biden's student loan forgiveness bill. That is back and forth, not only in mainstream, but on social media. Seeing a lot of tension on TikTok. Joe mentioned TikTok earlier in the episode on other several topics here, especially with the student loan forgiveness and others. Now, on a recent posting on your social media Instagram page, and I'm sure your Facebook too, you got into a certain point here, Joe, where you labeled the wildest divide in history, where our media stands on the Biden student loan forgiveness. Now, you mentioned that the left is calling this okay, but the right is calling it irresponsible. What's your views on that?
Yeah, so I never talk about my views. First, I speak on behalf of RIP views and showing both sides of any topic. So I'll give you both sides of what they're saying here.
Exactly. I meant like your views on, on the whole itself, because you did label that the left is saying that it's okay, but the right is also saying that it's irresponsible. Like, do you have any comment on that? Like as an individual? Or, I know that you like to stay as media that's unbiased. I get it, but I'd love to see your actual personal viewpoint on that. Because
I won't share my personal viewpoint because that'll get away from the kind of the point of RIP views of being just showing both sides. So I will tell you that the left is saying, yeah, it's okay, this student loan forgiveness, but as a matter of fact, it's probably not enough. It doesn't give enough back to. It's 10 grand for non-Pell recipients, 20 for Pell recipients. It doesn't do enough. It doesn't go far enough. It needs to be more widely spread to all Americans that are currently struggling with loan, debt that they've incurred from getting education, and that education's really the fastest mechanism to get out of poverty. So of course we should it's the fastest mechanism to get out of poverty. Of course we should be subsidizing it as a government and making it easier and less friction for people to get education.
Hey guys, if you're trying to look for an organic product, right, you're getting tired of using the over-counter medication that's filled with chemicals, filled with all those nasty, cancerous ingredients, guys, head over to liverishi.com. That's right, guys, liverishi.com. What is Live Rishi? It's an organic CBD oil company that uses natural hemp oil in their products, guys. As you can see, I'm out and about right now. You develop a rash from walking in the park, grab that Live Rishi cream with you, rub it on there. I'm telling you what, guys, it's going to work like wonders. It's going to work like wonders. Use promo code SAVAGEDUNFILTERED for 20% off your entire order, guys. And I'm telling you what, that's a great deal. 20% off your entire order, liverishi.com. Grab it today, guys.
Savaged Unfiltered.
We all incur debt over our careers and our lifetime, and we pay off that debt. That is as true and as American as can be. There's a reason why we have debt. There's a reason why there's companies that give debt out. They take some interest, but it's it's just you pay your debt. That's is a rule as old as time. And the fact that we're having to go out there and spend our tax dollars to pay for someone's liberal arts degree is BS, and it's bullshit that we have to do that as taxpayers. And that's what you're going to hear from the right. So it's there's a wide divide because the left says it didn't go far enough, and the right said there shouldn't be one penny that's given or forgiven. So it's just a very divisive topic right now that we're seeing a lot about. So it's been very interesting. It would be one thing if the left said, yep, this is great. Thank you very much, Biden administration. But they're not right now. We're seeing more. How come you didn't go further, Biden administration?
Yeah, you mentioned, I see a lot of bullshit coming out of this. I do. I see a lot of harsh wash. I see a lot of, just like, what? Like, huh? But I also see it as a spin-off of narratives. And what I mean by that, folks, is, you have, if anybody realize something, I want to put this in as an example here on the show. Earlier this year into last year, we heard the concept with My Body, My Choice, which also rolled into the coronavirus saga, where people were saying, well, if you're going to have people that will say my body, my choice regarding abortion, well, it's my body, my choice if I decide to wear a mask. Okay. Well, the left really didn't like that. So we've seen a constant battle between the left and the right with that issue, as well as the mask, as well as the abortion. Now, fast forward, people are, I'm sure you've seen it on social media, Joe, where they're now rolling into saying, the My Body, My Choice movement was both with the coronavirus masking, the social distancing, the abortion movement. If that was okay, how come if people are going to take out a loan, pay your payment, right? I mean, why can't it be like that? Like if you're going to take out a loan, why aren't you going to pay it back? Or have you thought the intention of even paying it back? Because I think that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing a spin-off of narratives. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would agree. I would think the right, and kind of to your point, is saying this is a coddled youth that they can't critically think on how to pay off their loan. They took the loan, they got the education. Now pay your debt. It's a coddled youth is kind of the spin we're seeing from the right. And when the left will say, America doesn't pay its debt. We're going into a national deficit where every year trillions of dollars is added to America's debt, and no one's paying that off. So why should I have to pay my loans off if the national government doesn't pay their loans? And we give tax breaks to corporate companies. Why are they getting it and not breaks for the middle class and the people going into debt to get educated? So there's two narratives out there. They're very widely different, and it's just a matter of consuming both and then forming your own opinion from there.
Sure. There was a piece that was put out the other day by Liz Wheeler, folks, and she had made a comment on this latest Biden student loan forgiveness law bill, however you want to see it. And she made a small comment.
We knew this was coming to cover up for a multitude, a smorgasbord, a charcuterie of failures. The Brandon administration is set to forgive more student debt and extend the payment pause another 4 months. This isn't just a slap in the face to those who already paid off our debts, but what about the over 70% of Americans without a degree? Or the Americans who went to a school they could afford so as not to be cash-strapped and waist-deep in loans? I guess all of us should just take one on the chin for the brats who took out loans they knew couldn't or wouldn't be paid back, no thanks to their lousy liberal arts or other worthless degrees. No, I don't think so. You took out the loan, you pay back the loan. If after 4 to 6 years at an overpriced university you still don't get that concept, well, therein lies yet another reinforcement to my point. Why should the rest of the taxpayers in this country, the ones who likely had to forego spring break vacations, AirPods, and Golden Goose shoes due to the price of tuition?
If you're going to take out a loan, well, you have to be responsible and pay it back. You cannot allow Uncle Sam to take care of your life. You cannot expect taxpayers to foot the bill. And, I see this a lot now, and I agree with Liz Wheeler on this, Joe, where, I see this coming out of the Biden administration as a conservative podcast host and as well as a content creator as well here on, on the internet. I see that, listen, I understand things happen. You're trying to further your education. You're trying to, achieve your goals in a certain career field or whatever you want to look at as at that. But, you're taking out a loan. You should have the intention on paying it back. Now, I understand that things happen. You lose your job. Finances change throughout the course of your life. I get it. I understand. But don't have that tension or that demeanor of just saying, fuck this, to hell with it. I'm just not going to pay it back. I'm going to let it go to collections. And then, it's going to go into a cycle where eventually, taxpayers such as myself and you are going to have to foot the bill. I mean, that's not right. I don't think that's right. I think that's put more deficit on the country. And I think this Biden administration is pretty much okay with it,
Yeah, and I think what you're describing is very much in line with what you'll read on Free Beacon or Fox or Breitbart. That's very much the line that's being towed from conservative media, and I think it's a very popular outlook from that group. The left, again, will say we're only making America stronger by removing the friction for education. If we remove the friction for education, being that financial friction, we are going to have a more educated population and therefore a better country. So there's two sides to every story. It's just about sifting through the bullshit and making your decision from there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, until we can come to the dinner table and agree, which is going to be a long time from now, I don't think it's going to happen in my generation or your generation. A lot of headaches coming. I do want to get into this one topic here before we close it out here, Joe, where Joe Biden and the radical left Democrats, they literally, I mean, this has just been put out here, folks. Okay. Whether you want to agree with this or not, that's why we live in the United States of America. We have opinions and thoughts, and, some of them are not always viewed on the same as the opposite party. Now, Joe Biden and the radical left Democrats, folks, have just literally orchestrated another election-enhancing money grab. And what do I mean by this? Well, a lot of conservatives are looking at this as possibly another coup, so to speak, Joe, where they're using this as to buy out voters for the midterms and possibly the 2024 general election. We're seeing more radicalized that is used on the right from the Democrats as a grab to do whatever they can. Obviously, the Mar-a-Lago stunt is basically going nowhere, and hopefully that gets squashed. That whole, like I said, here on the right, we're calling it another election-enhancing money grab.
Yeah, so I'm not familiar with the acute instance that you're talking of the Biden administration acquiring money for midterms. However, I will say both sides are accumulating money at a rapid pace. Even after the Mar-a-Lago search, Trump was getting more donations to his future campaign that he is, if he's even going to campaign, but he received more donations after the Mar-a-Lago FBI search than he was anytime previously. So I think to say one side or another is taking advantage of the extremism in our news to warrant getting money for their campaign. I think both sides are practicing this, right or wrong. That's up to you to decide. But I think it would be unfair to say one side is grabbing money. I think both sides are grabbing money. And again, I don't know exactly the instance you're talking about, but I just think as a general theme, both sides are doing everything they can to position the news headlines to incite their followers to give them money for future campaigns, and PAC organizations to give them money.
Yeah, like I mentioned here, and I'm going to get into exactly what I meant by it. This time, going around here, especially with this latest bill coming out with the student loan forgiveness, approximately 300 billion, folks, was put into this bill. And, just as I predicted, because I predicted this roughly about 6 months ago on an earlier episode, I said, they're going to try every stunt that they can possibly do. Okay, because, folks, I don't want to sound extreme here on my own show, but, at once, I did look at integrity coming from the Democratic Party at a high level. I respected the Democratic Party, but as I see the Democratic Party coming out, okay, and yet there are some Republicans that go this way, but I do see more of it on a Democratic side. I see more extremism. I see more radicalized agendas, and especially what they're doing. It's okay if we do this, but God forbid the Republicans do something. It's out of question. But now, right now, with this whole, student loan forgiveness, it's coming right out of the pocket of the working class American. And, Joe, you had mentioned earlier before, we have Americans right now in this country that are struggling. Okay. They're struggling at the most of a crippling inflation. And we're seeing an unaffordable prices in energy. And on top of that, we're seeing, war being taken place on foreign soil with Russia and Ukraine. So it's constantly a flip-flop scenario,
Yeah, the application of our tax dollars and the allocation of our tax dollars is going to always be a divisive topic. The left is going to have their point of view on how we spend our dollars, and the right's going to have their point of view of how they spend our dollars. So it's very much there's always been a debate from both sides about how we allocate our tax dollars and where we spend, or to your point, don't spend our tax dollars. So, we're going to continue. I don't see any way out of this. No one's going to have a perfect answer that agrees with everybody about how we spend our tax dollars. The right to the right, we're spending way too much right now. We're spending money in Ukraine. We're spending money on loan forgiveness. We're spending money in all the wrong places. And according to the left is we're not spending enough. We need to give the American dream is no longer, because we don't give people a chance to achieve their dreams. And we need to make it an easier place to climb the ladder, especially those minority populations, and really helping them out is where we need to spend our money. So the debate of where our tax dollars are allocated to is as old as time, and I don't envision a world where we won't see a wide gap between both parties about how we spend or don't spend our tax dollars.
Yeah, it's like I said, I mentioned before, and I'll say it again. It's a constant headache. It really is. I mean, you have a national debt now reaching in the high trillions. I think I just looked at it just the other day. It's peaking over like 33, almost $34 trillion in debt. Some of that debt was seen at the highest points of a presidential administration. A lot of spending coming out of the Barack Obama administration back in 2008, going through about 2010. We've seen some very, very little coming out of the Trump administration. We actually seen a reboot, so to speak, coming out of the Trump administration, which was always faced with a lot of criticism. With the how would a businessman reenact his vision on the economy and future jobs coming into this country. And now with going into 2022, going further beyond that, we're seeing more deficit than any other possibly president ever in this country, with the spending out of control. You mentioned before, money, being spent overseas to countries that literally can care two shits about us. Do you think some of that money should be spent here first, Joe, versus, sending it overseas?
I think you actually hit on a point that probably the left might agree with, is that the left would say, yeah, we need to do a lot more spending inside our border. We need to spend a lot more money on our own Americans and the populations that have never gotten a shot at climbing the ladder of the American dream. And so I think there's probably a lot of people on both sides that agree with our foreign spending and that being in excess. On both sides. I think the left would also say, you just gave the stats about our national debt. We don't pay that debt. We never pay that debt. So why should I pay my student debt? That's been a common theme we've been seeing. And the right's going to say, you got to pay your debt because that's what debt is. It's something you owe plus interest. And if anyone, and we degrade the path, and if everyone gets a college degree, is it truly mean anything anymore? If it's kind of just handed out for free willy-nilly, then does it really mean anything to have a college degree? I don't know, but both sides are providing their perspective and hiding it under the guise of being news, when in reality, both.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, check out what Trump said, Joe. You're going to find this
Unfiltered.
Sounds like Republicans are going to take back control of the Congress. And what would you like to see them do first? What should be priority number one if they do take back control?
Number one, take back. That's what has to be number one. We have to take it back. These are radicalized, horrible people that hate our country. What they're doing with the open borders and the judges and all of the things they've been doing is so sad. And then you look at Afghanistan as a topper, the way they came out. We were coming out, and we were coming out strong with dignity. There's never been a lower point than what happened with Afghanistan, in my opinion. So we've got to, number one, we've got to win the House, and I think we can win the Senate also. We should win the House, maybe handily, and I think we should win the Senate.
We heard some lock him up chants for Dr. Fauci out there. What about holding Dr. Fauci accountable?
Well, he is accountable. He's somebody that has done some pretty poor work. With me, he wanted to keep it open to China, keep it open to Europe. We would have lost hundreds of thousands more people. But he wasn't a big factor in my administration. But Biden has made him a big factor, and they have done.
But on the left, they're saying, they're giving statistics about how cumbersome that debt is on Americans and how restricting that debt is on Americans, and that there's going to be some stories of people clawing their way out of debt, but there's more instances of people being buried in debt and not being able to climb the ladder and achieve the American dream than there are people like this Newsmax lady. So you're going to see a lot more stories if you're looking from the right, with stories of people that can execute on a plan and that they do pay off their debt, and then stories from the left of statistics, more macro statistics about what debt is doing from a socioeconomic status on Americans as they depart college and enter into their careers.
But if I may add, Joe, what I'm saying here is, I'm going to close it out with this statement here. By the end of the day, there was a system that used to that was established in this country, and it worked for a very long time. It began right before or right at the point when we started introducing credit cards and loans, whether they were business loans or personal loans, right? To achieve a loan, a personal loan, or even a credit card, you would have to establish credit. I get it. And I think that was the right approach by doing it. And you would build up your credit from that. And, if your credit wasn't there, you just weren't eligible for the loan to begin with. And the banks wouldn't give it to you now. With this new student loan, and I hope the Biden administration has put some thought into this, where it would eventually it would push to the scenario to even what I'm talking about now with personal loans and credit cards, where they're basically just saying, okay, banks are going to approve you, no doubt about it, but when it comes down to the nicks and crannies of it and paying back towards the payments that you're basically charging onto this loan, this credit card or whatever. When that monthly statement comes up and says you need to pay this amount by a certain time, and you just say, fuck it, the hell with it. What does that say? That's now saying that banks are basically, they're not the same way they once was before. There's no integrity there, Joe. So it's setting our country up for failure rather than success.
Yeah. Do you know who Dave Ramsey is?
I've heard bits and pieces of him. Yes, I don't follow him or his work all the way, so to speak. But yeah.
He's a financial advisor, not formally, but he has a financial advice podcast and media, and he's got a whole network based out of Nashville. And if it was up to him, there would be no such thing as debt or credit. There would be, you pay in cash. Everything you get and you own is paid in cash. And that's his point of view. He's right skewed, so I think there's a right bias when you're listening to him. But this is not a common theme, but he's extreme. You should not have debt. You should never borrow money. You should only pay in cash. You should drive down any existing debt that you do have. He was not a fan of Joe Biden's or the Biden administration student loan forgiveness, but he was happy for those that got it, because he is a firm believer that you should never have debt. So it's an interesting.
Yeah, this is something you would probably hear from your grandparents, in their time, where they would tell you stories from like the 40s and 50s and probably even before this, right around the early 60s, when credit cards weren't really there yet. And they would say, if you didn't have the credit, you simply didn't have it,
Right.
And that was it. And to be honest with you, I think it worked. And why it worked, Joe, is I think it made the individual a lot more intellect, with one another, or it made them more responsible, in making these decisions. When they introduce that credit, that line of credit, those loans, now going into other programs, it's taking us on another path now. I see it as, making this nation a lot lazier, more irresponsible, and it's setting that message to the next generation of youth that it's okay to take out a loan with the intention of not paying it back. So,
that's very much aligned with what we're hearing from the right news sources. The left is going to have a different spin, in that we need more. This is more of an opportunity for us to get a broader population to climb the ladder and be a more educated society as a country. And this is only going to help that. So, again, the mantra of Rip Views, there's two sides to every story. You might as well read both sides and then decide from there.
Yeah, and I would like to thank you for coming on, because it's always interesting getting somebody that's like right in the middle, and you're smacked right in the middle. It's I can have this conversation with a person on the right, or I can have this conversation with a person on the left, and the far left would disagree with me on this, and they would say, it's we have to be more, we have to show more equalness to our country and this and that. I'm all about equality, but what I'm not about is a person that does not have the intention of paying something back, okay? Whether it's a handout or whether it's a loan. Somebody's given you that loan, or somebody's given you money to help you out. You need to have that intention on being a man, or saying, you know what, thank you very much. Here is the repayment form of what you lended me. That's what we need to go back to, a nation like that. And if I had somebody on the right, they would totally agree, and they would say, this is a system that that needs to be looked at more responsibly and more accurately, and we just can't give out student loans and credit cards to anybody. You have to be a man, you have to be a woman, you have to be an adult, and you have to be responsible in making that decision. Joe, I want to thank you for coming on today, buddy. It was a topic that needed to be addressed, and I know it's going to be on social media for probably the next coming of weeks. In closing, if people want to find your work, your content, where can they find you at, pal?
Yeah, well, one, thanks again for having me. Always a pleasure, Michael. I love talking about the bias that is in our news and making sure that we are always applying a lens of bias when consuming news. And if you'd like to hear more about Rip Views, you can find us on all social media, Twitter, Twitter, Instagram. We're now on Truth Social, although we're still trying to figure our way out through there. We're on TikTok as well. But you can subscribe to the Rip Views newsletter at ripviews.com. And that's going to give you every day at 7 a.m. Central Time a breakdown of the top 3 headlines from the perspective of the far left and the far right. So it's a good opportunity to start your day by recognizing bias and forming your own opinions after reviewing both sides of the bias headlines.
Great stuff, guys. Today, again, we were joined by Joe Rippert of Rip Views Media, where all media is biased, whether it views on the left or the right. Thanks very much, Joe, for joining us, and hope we get you on the next episode, buddy.
Sounds great. Thanks again. Anytime.
All right, bud.